sharing tasty recipes. Happy New Year to you. My hope for you is that this new year will be as boring as possible. Today's tasty recipe is called peanut chicken, and it was requested off the internet, and after I figured out who it was a young man. At that time he was just a kid, over 20 years ago, who was friends with both my boys, and he spent a lot of time over our house, and he remembers eating this, and he requested that I would make it. So here it is, peanut chicken. This is a real easy recipe, and it just has a few ingredients, so let's get right to it. First, you're going to need 2 big onions, and chop them kind of big, okay? Then garlic, and I've used about 4 or 5 chopped cloves of garlic. Now in this recipe you can use as much garlic as you want. The more the better, I always think. Then you're going to need like some bay leaves, and 3 of those. Some chicken broth, okay? And some garlic chili paste. Now this, you can use sambal oelek or whatever. Now if you don't have this, that's okay. Don't use Tabasco or Red Hot because that's the wrong flavor. But if you have some sort of spicy condiment, that works really good. Then I'm using 2 pounds of chopped chicken breast. If you want, and the flavor would actually be better, is to use real chicken pieces with bones and skin and all that stuff. But this is easier, and it's easier to serve, and people don't need to be picking off that. So that's what we're going to use. And this is what makes it so special: peanut butter. Now this is natural peanut butter, and I suggest if you can get this, this is really good. It doesn't have any added sugar, so it's not as sweet, okay? And when we first moved back to the States and we were making this, of course you couldn't get natural peanut butter way back then unless you had some hoity-toity health food store that ground it for you, and we didn't live in an area that did that, so we use regular Jif or Skippy, and it tastes fine. But if you can get natural peanut butter, the sauce isn't quite as sweet as that is, okay? And I think we're about ready to start. My drink for today is Lef. We've had this before, and it's a nice dark Belgian ale. Here's to your health and to a blessed new year. All right, let's get started. So let's heat up our pan. You don't want this too high, okay? And while that's heating up, put a couple glugs of oil in there, not a lot. There, that's a couple glugs. And while we're waiting for that to heat up, let's salt and pepper our chicken, okay? So let's just give this a good salting and a good peppering, I guess. When we lived in Africa, peanuts were the base of their diet, and of course they don't have sweet Jifs or anything like that, and they just have natural peanuts. And one of my favorite things to eat is when we're sitting out with our friends around the fire and eating boiled peanuts, freshly boiled peanuts. Oh my gosh, are those ever good? Okay, so this is still heating up, and we'll just be back. Okay, our oil is hot, so let's be adding our salted and peppered chicken. Just add that in there, and what we're going to do is we're going to just brown this for a few moments. Now again, because this is chicken breast, you don't need to brown it as much as if it was regular chicken pieces with the skin on, okay? So, we got this in there, and let's brown this for a few minutes. Okay, the breasts have been browning a little bit, and so now what we're going to add is we're going to add our onion, all right, and our bay leaves, and of course our garlic. And so what we're going to do now is just saute this for just a few minutes. Oh my gosh, that smells great. Nothing to me smells better than garlic and onion. Okay, we're going to let this cook for just a couple minutes, and we'll be right back. Open fire. Anyway, okay, this has been cooking for a while, right? And so now we're going to add the rest of our stuff. Now, again, this is sambal oelek, or garlic chili paste, And you can add as much or little as you want, depending on how you like spiciness. Okay, so I'm going to add maybe 1.5 teaspoons of that. Okay, stir that around in there. Okay, and then it calls for about 3 ounces of tomato paste, which is a half a can of regular tomato paste. And so I don't know what that is in this, so I'll just squirt some in there. Okay. And stir this around. All right. And then we add our 2 cups of chicken stock or chicken broth. All right. And we stir that around. Now, depending on how much sauce you like, Mrs. Fatscraps likes a lot of sauce and a little meat to put on her rice. So this one calls for 2 cups of chicken broth and a cup of water. And I'm not going to put in a full cup of water. I'm just going to put in maybe about a half a cup of water. I don't care for a lot of sauce, and it's a lot of leftovers. Okay, so that's it. And you're going to ask, well, what about the peanut butter? Well, patience. We're going to let this simmer for about 45 minutes, and at the end, we'll be adding the peanut butter to thicken our sauce. And so now I'm going to go start my rice, and I'll see you in about 45 minutes. All right, it's been about 45 minutes, and it's time to add our peanut butter. Now, if you've never bought real natural peanut butter, make sure you check, because some of them say they're natural, but they're really not. They have added sugar. Natural peanut butter is simply peanuts and a little bit of salt. Okay, so we're going to add this, and the recipe calls for a couple tablespoons. I think you can add as much as you like, at least add a couple tablespoons, but add this, and what it does, it is just the best. What it does is it thickens the sauce a little bit, but it also adds a depth to the flavor that you just can't believe. Now, if you think this is weird, it's not. If you like Thai food, there's peanuts in that and all that. So anyway, let's do that. As I was making this today, I remembered the first time I ever saw a recipe with peanut butter was back when I was a kid, and it was the Merv Griffin show, and the Pointer Sisters were on, and they made him a dish of salmon with peanut butter. Who would have known that I'd be making something with peanut butter 40 years later? All right? So we're going to let this simmer now for a little bit, and then we're going to be getting right back. And while this is simmering, my rice is cooking. It'll be done in about 9 minutes. And one thing that we have with ours is that we just take fresh spinach and put it in a microwave-safe bowl and just microwave it just a little bit. Don't overcook it, but just microwave a little bit so it's a little bit wilted and all that. And that's a really nice part to be added to this, and we'll do with that. So I'll see you again in about 10 minutes, okay? All right, this is almost done. The rice is almost done. I have steamed my spinach, and as I was looking at it, I realized I just steamed it for about a minute in the microwave. And then what it does, it limps it up, but it still has some nice texture. While we're waiting for this, I want to share with you my favorite part of this meal. And it is something that most of you probably never had. You might have heard of it, but you've never had. In the Central African Republic, the way that meals are served is that they make a sauce like this, and usually there's not meat in it because that's too expensive. There's some greens or things like that in it. Okra is in it. But what they also have for their starch is manioc or cassava. And all of you have probably eaten some cassava if you've ever had tapioca pudding, all right? So what they do is they take the manioc and they pound it into a flour, and then they add warm water to it, and make just a ball, a boule of it. And then what they do is with that is they take that and then they dip it into the sauce, and when you get really good at it, you make a little divot in with it with your thumb, you dip it in the sauce, and you grab a piece of meat with that. So, if you know any of the cuisines of sub-Saharan Africa, you know that all of them have this kind of starch, and they call it fufu. And I didn't realize that they called it fufu until years later. Where we had it, they called it gozo, and that's sango for this. Now, everything is made different. Some fufu is made from bananas, some is made from corn, some is made from millet. And so this is what it is. So I'm just going to show you this. So you can get some cassava flour if you want. And if you can find the coarse ground stuff, oh my gosh, that's even better. But I can't find that without ordering it, and I don't feel like doing that. Then you just pour some in there, and don't boil your water, but have some nice warm water. And all you're making, really, is just a goopy, is just a very stiff dough, okay? Now, I learned finally after a few years, don't do this in a pot on the stove, because if you do that where you have the water and then you pour the manioc powder, manioc flour into it, it sticks to the pot like no one's business, and cleanup is just terrible. But if you do it this way, where you have the cassava flour in the bowl and just add warm water, it's a lot better. Okay, so this is not thick. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit more. And my rice is done, you heard that. I'm going to add a little bit more and keep stirring. See you in a minute. Okay, now the moment. Now, on my plate, you can see my manioc ball, my gozo, and also I have rice, which I normally don't have both of these together, but I just wanted to show you this. And then what I do with the spinach is I put it on the rice, and then, oh man, this looks great. So you just dip into your beautiful sauce here. You have some chicken, you have some sauce. And like I said, normally you would just eat this with a fork with the rice, but I wanted to show you about the gozo. So you take a little bit of gozo, dip it in that. That is tasty. Peanut chicken.